And that's the kind of policy we're talking about. This is this whole kind of program going on. So we have to get a program going like Glass-Steagall. And Glass-Steagall is the kind of driver which can most quickly restore the United States.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Mr. Larouche, because I totally agree with you, Glass-Steagall, yeah, I mean, that's what got us into all this. It's what allowed them to do this. And Obama says, well, it was legal. Yeah, because you criminals got in to the government and changed the law. There was a reason this was illegal. It got us into 1929. How do we get Glass-Steagall back? I mean, you've said as the crisis gets worse and worse, we have a chance. But I don't hear Congress talking about bringing Glass-Steagall back.
Well, you will find that we're getting close to the point that the votes will be there. The danger in not getting Glass-Steagall is the fact as long as this president still has any clout, he with his foreign partners will probably be able to jam up and prevent Glass-Steagall from being enacted at that time. So this fellow has got to be neutralized. He's not going to leave office at once, I don't think, but he's going to be jammed up by various kinds of legal action against him for what he's done. If he's neutralized in some significant degree, and I think he's on the way to that, that's what's happening with some of these turncoats who are suddenly back in against Obama now. But if we get him under control, we can get Glass-Steagall through. We almost have the votes for it now, except as Obama is still president, as effectively president, it's going to be tough to get that vote through. We've seen what happened with that before. Okay,
so Obama has to go, and you were saying this a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 months ago. Now the establishment's panicking so much, they're saying that. Mr. Larouche, we're going to break here in a moment. I'm going to come back and talk about where we're going if we don't change course. And if we don't change course, what's the time frame? Start getting into that now. Where are we going? When you say collapse, what does that mean?
I mean a general breakdown crisis of the transatlantic system, which will then become a crisis for the trans-Pacific system. But the immediate threat now is that Europe is already going down the ditch. The United States is virtually on the ditch. If we don't reverse this immediately, we're going into a breakdown crisis. Not just a depression, I mean a breakdown crisis. It's all there. We also are inches away with a lot of public support for this, for the kind of measures, recovery measures, which we do know how to put into effect. But we need to have enough control.
I am here in Dallas, Texas. Lyndon Larouche, I want to ask you this question, sir. You've got the Occupy Wall Street people just criticizing free market capitalism, at least some of them. That's how the Federal Reserve is trying to steer it, instead of pointing out that it's insiders operating that have created this. I'm calling for moves to actually occupy the private Federal Reserve and point out that it needs to be nationalized, as Kennedy began to move towards doing, or as Lincoln did with a similar system, as you know, at the time when the Rothschilds wanted outrageous amounts of interest for them to loan him money. He just said, I'll just issue government credit, which is what the banksters do and have built their world empire out of. Can you sum up for people out there what the Federal Reserve is, and if you agree with my plan to try to shift away from nebulous Wall Street and Soros' crowd trying to call for austerity back towards the Federal Reserve itself and the British intel type folks?
Well, first of all, we have to do Glass-Steagall. That's the first step. If you don't do Glass-Steagall, you cannot solve this problem. You can't manage it. If you put through Glass-Steagall, you would now have a problem, but you're halfway to solving it. What we have to go toward is a federal credit system, which is pretty much what we did with in the coming out of the Revolutionary War, with our victory there. It was built into the Constitution. Now, the system of national banks, the first and second national bank of the United States, were the instruments by which the United States was saved. We get in a situation where we have to, out of credit as such, signed off for by the federal government. This credit will be then used through banks and other things, through loans, which are going to build up our economy. Now, that's what we need to do. If we do that, we can get out of this mess by going to high technology projects as our policy, typified by the WAPA. But we also have to take intermediate steps at the same time, which will get an unemployed population, an unskilled population, back into the labor force as an active, productive part of the labor force.
We've covered that earlier. Give us your websites for people to find out more about your plan.
Oh, I don't have it, but
well, there's a Larouche PAC and Larouche Pub.
Yes.
Both of those will lead you there, and we have links to them up on Infowars.com. I just wanted to find out the best one. I guess Larouche PAC and Larouche Pub, both of them.
Yeah, right.
We'll take people there. Look, sir, we've had you on about solutions before, and I appreciate your ideas, and I agree with quite a bit of it. My only question here is the time frame, because you've been very accurate as of late predicting what would happen next. Where is Europe going? Will Germany put up with bankrolling this new economic union that's just a system for extracting the wealth of the people to the multinational banks? And where does that go in Europe? Because, you know, obviously Europe is connected to what's happening here in America in the whole transatlantic situation.
It will go the other way. What you have some movements, as in France. The former Prime Minister of France is moving in a useful direction. You have tendencies in various parts of Europe to do something. But unless the United States acts first, Europe won't do it. So therefore, who's got to do it? Well, you'll get Russia is doing something big. China's doing something big. That's going to be a significant factor in this thing. But the key thing is the United States must take the lead. We must get this guy under control, get him out. We have to go back to the kind of program the Kennedy and Company would appreciate, including Glass-Steagall.
I understand that, sir, but this is my question. We know Obama's a puppet. We know he represents the corrupt elements of Wall Street. But isn't it like shark teeth? I mean, who rolls in behind Obama, and won't you just have a new puppet but the same puppeteers?
No, you won't. The only thing you could get in that direction would be an outright dictatorship. That's the only thing you'd get from that squad. They are not capable of any bailout program. They're not capable of doing anything good. It's up to those in the institutions who recognize the United States has to be saved. It has to be very rough and direct action because we've got a sick population that can't take any more of this. The whole system is on the verge of crashing. I mean, we could be talking tomorrow morning and find out there's no economy anymore. I'm not going to say that's going to be the case, but I'm saying that's what could be the case at any time now.
No, our ship is going directly towards rocks. We've already hit some big ones, but we're going towards a rocky shoreline, there's no doubt.
But if we get through Glass-Steagall, get it through, and get into a credit system operation, use NWAPA as a commitment that's going to dictate what we do.
You're saying that will turn the ship, but then we've got to repair the holes.
Actually, we know how to fix those holes. We've done it before. Look what Franklin Roosevelt did when he came in. Now, this situation is worse, actually, than Franklin Roosevelt faced. But the same method, the same approach will work. What you need is not jobs. What you need is real base-building jobs, high-technology jobs as much as possible. And the WAPA is the typification of that. We have opportunities. In other words, we can actually, we can start a slow build-up, an accelerating build-up of the U.S. economy again. And that can be done by the federal government. It's the only way it will happen. It will happen by the help of other countries, but it will happen only when the U.S. government itself puts its muscle behind this rescue operation.
Well, I know this. The Democrats want to raise taxes, which will put the country into a bigger cardiac arrest. They make it about taxing the rich when the big globalist rich are offshore and exempt. The mainline Republicans are like, just keep the banker bailouts going, and corporate welfare is great, and have a $2 trillion total defense budget. That's going to bankrupt us and goes nowhere. And so people can't criticize you calling for pure investment and call that socialism when the other two things we have are just sheer madness. I would like to just see massive tax cuts. I'd like to see some basic fair tariffs put in place. I'd like to see our military pulled out of most of the bases. I'd like to see the Glass-Steagall reenacted. I'd like to see the quadrillion plus in derivatives written off. And sure, that would cause it. I mean, that's just common sense. I don't want to hear, though, from so-called conservatives all day about, well, we shouldn't have any investment or programs to get people working when they're just going to be on welfare anyways. And if you don't give them the welfare, they're going to burn the cities down. I mean, every direction we go down, more and more of our options are being shut down. And Lyndon, I'm not trying to be negative here, But I don't really see the establishment changing course. I know there's elements that think the wrecking of the ship is the way they're going to fully take over the system, like we're some third world country that the IMF is imploding through the shock doctrine. But I don't think you're going to have the same effect. This is not a third world country they're wrecking. When they wreck the U.S. and the euro, they wreck the entire globe, and we go into absolute hell, and we've got Israel running around talking about hitting Iran. I think they're going to try to start a big war. I think that's how they plan on getting out of this.
And there was a plan on their agenda, but I don't think it's going to work at this point. We're actually in a breakdown crisis. These guys who have been running this show have lost their nerve. They realize that they've got no bottom in their ship. And the question is, if we've got the leadership inside the United States of leading responsible citizens, especially some in the Congress who will come out, I think, under the proper conditions, will come out now and start to do the kinds of things that should have been done before. We have the agenda which can actually fix this problem. It's not going to be a miracle solution, but it will seem like a miracle to people who have been going down the road this way it's been going for the past years. We can actually rebuild this nation. We've done it before. We know how to do it. It's in the system. It's built into our system of government. And there's some options we have in the world at large. We can win. The question is, can we get enough people with the guts in leading positions, influential positions, to decide we're going to do it? We can save this nation. We can save it right now. Right? And we don't have much time.
I understand. Well, obviously, next week sometime, I'd like to get you back on when I'm back in studio to really go over your ideas for solutions. Then we're going to have some people on like Lou Rockwell to give a more Austrian economic view on it. But regardless, we know the direction we're going right now has got to be reversed. And I have studied history, and you're right. At the end of the war in 1798, hyperinflation, totally bankrupt. The system you're talking about got us out of it and worked quite well. Lincoln did something similar and funded a whole war off of what you're talking about, and then, of course, is why they killed him later. Regardless of what you think of Lincoln, the fact is that we know the way we're going is destructive. Aaron Dykes, in closing, I know you've been waiting in the wings there. Do you have any questions or comments for Lyndon Larouche? Then we're going to let him go and go to phone calls.
Yeah, obviously I see the significance of bringing back Glass-Steagall, but I was wondering what he sees as the role of reining in globalism, because it would be very hard to bring any kind of industrial productive base back to the country when they're dedicated to shipping jobs overseas, the brain drain stuff that they facilitated. How do we fight that? If it means ending treaties, I'm ready to start talking about that.
Well, right now, reality is real money. I'm talking about money that's fungible. Real money exists only in the hands of national governments, including the United States. We may look poor, but all those bankers are bankrupt. All the big money guys are bankrupt.
They're zombies.
Yep. And therefore, the United States government controls the ability of the government to create credit, federal credit. The mobilization of federal credit for getting the economy working again is the most powerful force on this planet if we make it, if we do that. And that's the solution. Get federal credit mobilized for things that do work, and the federal government has to do it, because that's the only way this thing works. But we have to, by putting the Glass-Steagall through, we will wipe out Wall Street and the City of London. They cannot withstand a Glass-Steagall impact on their swindles.
You're right. That's why they won't bring it back, even though it's the common sense thing, because it shuts off their power to create artificial money for themselves.
Exactly. And only in a crisis of this time, where the American people and more members of the Congress and others are breaking, they're breaking out of the cage. They're willing to go now to a federal resort, a federal credit system, to get this country moving again. And this is the time where we have the aces.
What about things like the Dakotas, state bank system as well? I mean, that's a microcosm. Those have worked quite nicely as well.
But you need the power of federal credit. You can't rely upon just bank deposit credit. You have to rely on bank deposit credit for the banking system. But the real thing we need is masses of federal credit, controlled federal credit for large projects which will rebuild this economy.
All right.
This is as Roosevelt did in his time.
All right, well, we're having a discussion about this. Undoubtedly, the system we're under, this crony insider monopoly thing, is the worst possible system, and we're certainly looking at different lifeboat options here. Lyndon Larouche, you called so much of this with great precision. People can find out more just Googling Lyndon Larouche. You'll see LaRouche Pack, .com, LaRouchePub.com, and other sites. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, sir.
Good to be with you.